me being me, I want to fix it. I want to figure out a solution. I want to figure out how this happens, and I just want to be a part of the solution to that. So, or a department called the International Center for Migration, Health and Development. And they're located in Geneva, Switzerland, and they allowed me to work with them on my research project, which is actually the human trafficking. And through them, I got some experience actually working in an office that works with human rights and migration health. The internship was something that was mandatory for all the, well, not mandatory, but it was an option for the students. We all could contact an organization and see if we could work with them for the couple of months that we were going to be there. So I contacted the ICMDH, and they allowed me to work with them, or at least to work with them, or to work within their office. Nice. But that, when we were trying to look for topics for our research project, I thought, well, human trafficking is something that I would really be interested in doing, especially because Eastern Europe, I was so close to Eastern Europe, and that's a big hub area for, that's a transit area. So there's a lot of women, men, and children who travel through Eastern Europe, and then they're taken over to South America or to Western Europe or to North America. So I thought, well, this is perfect. I'm in a perfect location to look more into human trafficking. And I'm in Switzerland, and Switzerland has many great resources for people who are working against human trafficking and human rights, especially because the United Nations headquarters for Europe is there. The World Health Organization is close by as well. All these different organizations that are doing so much to improve human condition. Sure what angle to take with human trafficking. Since it's underground, it's very hard. It's illegal and it's an underground activity, so it's very hard to find a lot of resources for that. Can't just walk up to a person who has been involved in human trafficking and ask them about it for many ethical reasons, and also just it's very hard to find access to people like that. And there was a paper that came out from the United Nations, and it was talking about how the Greater Mekong subregion is actually under review. Their programs are under review because they're not doing enough to reintegrate women after sex trafficking. And up until that point, I had never thought of sex trafficking as what happens after that person leaves. I always thought of it as, oh, the person's captured and they undergo so much abuse and mental abuse and physical abuse while they are trafficked. But then I never thought about what happens to them after. Usually we would just think they go back home. Right. And everything's okay, like they're happy to be back home. But there's so many layers to it. The first one is that afterwards they've received a lot of physical and mental abuse. The physical, maybe they can heal from the physical abuses, cuts, abrasions, bruises. I mean, there's a multitude of them. And then there's the mental abuses, which would take much longer to fix. And those two factors can affect their life so much because they can't go to work afterwards. They might have difficulties with relationships, personal relationships. Some of these women who were taken had families, they had children and husbands. So when they come back, that could also create problems because the husband may not want to be with them. If she's been gone for a long time, the children may not know her if they were young. Her family may have actually been the reason why she was trafficked, because if they wanted to sell her to get money, then she's not going to want to go back to her family, especially if she knows about that.
Just focusing on...
So my research is actually focusing on studying shelters and services that are offered to women after they have left sex trafficking.
Most of the women in prostitution, sex trafficking, aren't in it by choice. They may stay in it, but they're typically don't stay in it by choice either. Mm-hmm. So sex trafficking, what our priority project is domestic minor sex trafficking, the trafficking of children in our area. So there's a lot of organizations that are doing international and adult. So what we're focusing on is children right here in the South Plains. And so when we're talking about domestic minor sex trafficking, we're talking about anybody under 18 that is in the sex industry for exchange of anything of value, money, clothing, food, shelter, protection, anything like that. So when we're talking about sex trafficking and what we're doing, we're talking about children. Okay, they certainly don't choose to be a prostitute. And so when we're talking about children specifically under the age of 18, considering the age of consent in Texas is 17, they're not able to consent. So anytime a person under the age of 17 has sex with an adult, that is legally defined as sexual assault because they're not able to consent. So that's a correlation, especially with children, is that they cannot consent to have sex with an adult. So that legally is defined as sexual assault. As far as sex trafficking goes, I guess that's mostly what Rocio's working on. People need to make a correlation between prostitution and sex trafficking, because I think probably the attitude that we have that fuels the problem is that it's between two consenting adults. Typically, the average age to be recruited into prostitution is between 12 and 14. So even if we see adult women in prostitution, they were probably recruited at a very young age and have not been able to get out. And then, of course, if we see children, in prostitution, that's obviously not their choice to be there. So I think we have to get over the attitude of, prostitution is the person's choice to be in there, because it's hardly ever their choice to be in prostitution and stay in prostitution, because once they get out, once they get into that life, it's almost impossible to get out of it.